Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP married for 9 years with his wife and faced turmoil when he discovered her affair. Despite attempting counseling and giving her a second chance, he caught her again and decided to end the marriage. After she moved out, he told her parents the truth about the cheating. Now let's get into the story. My now ex-wife, 35, and I, 35 male, were together for 9 years, with one of them being spent as a married couple. The two of us didn't have kids, but we had 2 dogs that we loved to pieces. One of them was disabled, so they required a little bit more care than the other, but that didn't matter to me. We had our fights and issues over the years, but it was nothing it didn't seem like we could work on. I foolishly believed that our issues were something that could be fixed. I went as far as to suggest counseling, to which my ex-wife agreed. However, to successfully do couple counseling, both people have to be willing to work with the therapist. I was more than willing to work with the therapist and was upfront about my issues. Most of the time, she would just let me talk. A few times my ex-wife didn't even show up, so I was left there, sitting awkwardly with the therapist who felt bad for me. Despite this, I wasn't willing to give up. Then I discovered she was cheating on me, and it was like a huge wake-up call. It was a complete accident that I discovered it. She said she was going to hang out with a friend for the day, so I spent the day doing some chores. This included going to the grocery store to grab some things for dinner. When I was there, I ended up bumping into the actual friend she was supposed to be out with. I asked the friend where my wife was. Her friend seemed confused. So right, and I knew something was up. Why would she lie about hanging out with a friend that she wasn't hanging out with? It was hard to do the grocery shopping when my mind was focused on where my wife was, but I managed to do it. When I got home, I waited for my wife to come home. She came in the door, greeting me like nothing was wrong. I confronted her right away because I couldn't wait to talk about this situation. When I told her I ran into her friend, her face paled. She said she made a mistake, but I didn't buy it. That pushed and pushed. Eventually, my ex-wife told me that she was sexting with this guy she met online. This had been going on for nearly the entire time we were married, which devastated me. That night was the first time they met. How romantic, I sneered. Normally, it wasn't like me to be sarcastic, but I was hurt and just so angry. Here I was trying to work on this relationship with my wife. I was even willing to go to counseling. Meanwhile, she is messing around with this guy. I looked back at all the times she was on the phone and laptop. It didn't seem odd to me before, but now I realize how intense it was. Her first reaction was to beg me to give us another try. We were best friends, she said. She couldn't live without me. When I pointed out that the two of us were already seeing a therapist, my wife said she was going to try this time. In an act of desperation, I gave her a second chance. Then 3 days later, I caught her talking with the guy. She said they were just friends, and it was difficult to cut off a friendship. My wife claimed they had to taper off slowly. It was at that point I knew my marriage and entire relationship was over. I told her that under no circumstances would I give her another chance. The moment I said that, it was like a flip switch. My wife told me fine and moved out. She ended up staying with her parents. We rented a house, so at least we didn't have to deal with that. I was grateful she was just quick to move out and not put up a fight. Our dogs were confused at first and desperately missed her. I did my best to help them transition to the new environment. Things can be like people in certain ways. They get separation anxiety and react to sudden changes as much as we do. Once she was out, I kept trying to get her to take the rest of her stuff out of the house. I didn't want to look at it anymore. After weeks of badgering her, I got sick of waiting, put the boxes in the back of my car, and went to her parents' house. I had no animosity towards her parents. They always treated me nice. So while they were surprised to see me, they seemed happy. Her mom said she was sorry for the divorce and said sometimes people just fall out of love. This confused me. So I asked my former mother-in-law what my ex-wife had said was the reason for the divorce. My ex left out the cheating bit, so I felt it was my duty to tell her parents the unabashed truth. They seemed shocked, so I offered to give them evidence if they didn't believe me. No part of me felt bad for telling them the truth. My ex should have been upfront with them. They were good people but figured they would support their daughter, despite this, because it was their daughter. Oh, how wrong I was. I ended up discovering through mutual friends that my former in-laws confronted my ex about what I said. She denied it when they said I offered to show them proof. She admitted that she did step outside the marriage. Her parents then told my ex that she had 30 days to find a new place. At the end of those 30 days, she would have to get out regardless if she found other accommodation. My former mother-in-law did reach out to me to apologize, saying they didn't raise their daughter to have terrible morals like that. I accepted the apology even though it wasn't their fault. How are they to know what their daughter would do as an adult? I got quite a few angry and explicit texts from my ex after her parents kicked her out. She told me that she could be homeless and shamelessly demanded that I let her stay in her old apartment, at least until she got on her feet. My response was to tell my ex to go stay with her AP. If he cared about her so much, then surely he'd let her stay. I blocked any possible numbers she could contact me from and started the next phase of my life. Trying to heal from this relationship was by far the most difficult thing I had ever tried to do. I had my family and friends beside me, but they could only do so much because unless you've been through this situation, it was hard to relate. However, spending time with those who care about me, going to therapy for just myself, and just taking one day out of the week to take a walk or something proven to help. I still am in the middle of the healing process, but I know I've come a hell of a long way since first discovering her affair. As far as I know, my ex still isn't talking to her parents and is couch surfing until she can officially move into her new apartment. There are times she still tries to reach out to contact me, but outside of official channels regarding our divorce, we have no reason to talk. Let the AP have my ex. He may think he has won the ultimate prize, but this couldn't be further from the truth. My ex is about as far from a prize as you can get. Today's second story. In this story, OP discovered his girlfriend of 8 years had a 6-year affair with her former professor, exchanging intimate favors for academic success. Devastated, he gathered evidence, leading to her valedictorian status being revoked and the professor being fired. After confronting her, he ended the relationship, leaving her jobless, and has since embraced solitude. Now let's get into the story. My girlfriend at the time, 26 and I 29, dated for 8 years and moved in together in the last year of our relationship. Things were as smooth as they should be, and we never really ever had any arguments. We understood each other, and we are meant to be together. At the time, my mom had turned up the heat on me a bit, so my girlfriend and I started planning for our future more seriously. Having dated for that long and lived together for a year, there didn't seem to be a need to wait any longer. I'm one of those lucky few who attained a good level of success early. I worked as a big data analyst for a software company, and I got to work from home 3 days a week. My girlfriend, on the other hand, was not doing badly. She had a 9-to-5 job in a big media corporation. The day that would halt my marriage plans and make me question my decision to marry my girlfriend began like every other really bad day. First, I had a very tight deadline to meet. My network was slow. The power had been out for nearly 2 hours, and to make matters worse, my computer broke down. I couldn't find enough cuss words to vent my frustration, something I rarely ever do. Fortunately, my girlfriend's laptop, which she used at home, was available, so I borrowed it. I mean, it was a lifesaver for me at that moment, but it became more a few moments later. After I finished what I was doing, there was nothing left to do. It could have been out of boredom that I strayed to one of her old email accounts, which had a name so funny that it cracked me up each time. I knew she wasn't using it anymore, so it didn't feel like invading her privacy when I opened it. There couldn't be any serious conversations here, I thought to myself. My eyes soon descended on a name, which I remembered from her high school days as her project supervisor. She mentioned how understanding and supportive he was throughout her project. So seeing his name in her chats, I got a little curious. Maybe he wanted to know more about her project. know how she was doing after school, but it was far from that. I didn't expect to find the kind of conversation they were having in one of the threads. They were exchanging explicit messages. For a moment, my head went light and void of any thoughts. I checked his profile to be sure I wasn't mistaken, and indeed, I wasn't. It was her professor from college. I mean, this man was over 45 years of age. He was married and had kids. I couldn't take it. Much to my dismay, I realized that they had kept in touch and had continued with their affairs since their college days. They had been hooking up constantly on and off for at least 6 years. I knew we were both done, but I still decided to go through their previous conversations. If what I had seen so far surprised me, there was more waiting for me in the older messages. As I read through the older messages, I saw where she was thanking the said professor for everything he had done for her, including helping her grades and for her to become the valedictorian. She had, of course, extended sexual favors to him in exchange for his helping hand. He responded by saying that she was such a darling for keeping to her end of the bargain. He also praised her for being such an angel, satisfying his sexual urges throughout his wife's pregnancy. At this point, I was pretty much enraged. I felt used and useless. To think that all these things happened while we were actively dating was what blew my mind the most. He also expressed interest in continuing their hookups, wishing it wasn't the last time. She assured him that it would not be the last, and subsequent messages, including their most recent messages, proved it wasn't. Since I wasn't sure when the next time I'd be able to spend this much time with her laptop would be, and indeed I never wanted to, I hurriedly printed all her dirty conversations with her professor where they discussed his influencing her grades and their sexual affair. I also proceeded to print their newer messages where they planned hookups at remote hotels and described their sexual experiences afterward in the most explicit ways. Their most recent was only a couple of weeks back, and I wondered how they managed to hide so well right under my nose for so long. Although I was livid, I tried not to let it show. It was not necessary. So when she came back from work, I pretended nothing was wrong. If there was, it certainly was with me for not seeing any clues for the past 6 years. The discovery hit me like a bombshell, and I was definitely going to give her a full dose of her own medicine. The next day, I got in touch with a lawyer and we got talking. I explained everything that transpired and through him forwarded evidence to her university about the affair between my girlfriend and the professor. We expressly stated our conviction that her grades could be influenced by him, and this raised questions about her status as a valedictorian. Finally, it was time to end it all. I was in no mood for accusations and arguments, so I simply got the copies of the recent emails I printed and put them on our bed just before she came home from work, while I sat on the couch waiting for what would follow next. I heard her scream as she entered the bedroom and saw the papers. She came running out full-on sobbing and started breaking down at my feet. I told her calmly that she had 24 hours to get her things and get the frick out of my life forever. I didn't ever want to hear from her. I did not ever want to see her. I needed her gone from my life, as if she had never existed in it. Where she was going would be none of my concern. Then I walked out while she salved on the floor. My heart was aching and breaking into a million pieces, but I knew it was the right thing to do. My relationship was never mine in the first place. What a joke. Following up on the scandalous case of the student-professor sexual relationship, I learned that an inquiry had opened and both she and the professor had been called to face the disciplinary panel of the school. Some months later, the university made a notification that she was stripped of her valedictorian status. Her degree was judged to be fake and was consequently revoked. Her name was also published alongside the university's public statement that disassociated the school for her certificates. As for the professor, he was gainfully fired and had to face early retirement since his profession forbade absorbing any lecturer whose reputation was questionable. His career was officially over. The public announcement made by the university took a toll on my ex-girlfriend, and I heard soon after that she got fired from her job following the revoking of her degree, as the degree was mandatory for her position. I've been enjoying the past months of solitude. Today's third story. In this story, OP faces betrayal when his wife becomes increasingly distant after deciding to adopt a dog. Despite initial excitement, Her connection with the breeder, Alex, grows suspicious. After discovering flirtatious texts, he confronts her, catching them in the act. He swiftly ends the relationship, reclaiming his home and pets, while ensuring Alex's business suffers from public backlash. Now let's get into the story. I, 32 male, and my wife, 32 female, were huge animal lovers, and in our 8 years of being together, I thought it would keep our bond strong. In fact, this is what brought us together in the first place. I remember putting in my dating profile many moons ago, but wanting to go on a date with someone who was at the park with my dog. She messaged me back and said that she wanted to do the same. Now our relationship seemed so perfect from the start. We both got along super well, and our love for animals, especially my dog, brought us closer. She didn't have a dog herself, but instead a cat. The cat and my dog grew to love each other when she moved in with me. I thought that she was the one and the most perfect person I could think of. I mean, come on, animal lover, and didn't want me to toss away my dog, my best friend. It seemed so right. Naturally, I popped the question quickly. I imagined we could all have the animal house we wanted, where we got along swimmingly. While hiking, I asked her at the top of the mountain one day. She said yes, and I was over the moon. We planned the wedding quickly and had a small ceremony where we and a few family members got together. My dog was the ring bearer because he mattered so much, and neither of us knew anyone with sons to take this responsibility. From the moment I said I do, I knew this life would be perfect, which is why I still don't understand why my biggest love is what caused my relationship's downfall. So here we were, happily married, and with our animals 3 years into our relationship. Her cat Spartacus got along super well with Boney, my dog. Naturally, I figured that our family of 4 would be the idea, until she asked a question. This was about 5 years into our relationship. She said that we might get him a companion because Boney was getting older. I told her nope, he doesn't need it. Bonnie never seemed to care about other animals. He just liked his treats and pets from me. I took him out every day to get exercise, and while Bonnie was still spry and happy, I could tell he was getting old. The vet warned me that his joints were beginning to wear down, and he might not be the energetic dog I've had for over 10 years. She started to ask again. I kept telling her no, that this is a huge responsibility. She worked as a graphic designer, sometimes working long hours, and she didn't have the time for a dog. We had many arguments about it until one day, and she showed me a freaking PowerPoint on why she should get a dog. Convinced, I finally gave in. However, when we went to the shelter, none of the dogs seemed to fit. They were friendly, sure, but she didn't see one that fit her. She told me that she wanted a golden doodle. Naturally, these dogs are laid back, and their temperaments are great. It's perfect for old Bonnie, because he's not as active as he used to be. And if the dog wanted to wrestle and roughhouse, Spartacus still acted like a kitten despite being 8. She told me that there were reputable golden doble breeders. I gave in, told her sure, and she did her research. She brought up this breeder, which was really close to our place. So I agreed. Why not? We could get the dog and then head back by the end of the day. At least she wasn't trekking me halfway across the country for a dog. We drove over there, and then we met the breeder. His name was Alex. Now my wife is a bit flirty, but suddenly she started moving closer to him, engaged in conversation. This was just the initial introduction stage. It bothered me, but I figured maybe I was overreacting. We agreed to return in about a month, once the puppies were weaned from their mother. In that month, I saw a change in my wife. She grew distant, and when Boney and I went out to the park, she would stay behind. She told me it was work, but I have seen no major financial changes since then. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Naturally, I didn't want to cause trouble, so I kept mum. A month passed, and we went over there again. Now these two were incredibly friendly towards each other, to the point where I was being pushed out. This started to get me angry. I asked her if something was going on between Alex and her. They were close enough to each other, so naturally it could be possible. But nope, nothing. She told me he was just a nice guy helping her get her dog ready. We argued about it, and she told me I was being paranoid. I told her I didn't appreciate being left out of the decisions. We both needed space. Then it came time to adopt the little golden doodle. We paid the breeder fee, which is insane. I don't know why I thought spending over $1,000 on a dog was a good idea, and we took our tiny boy Moose home. Moose and Boney did well together, but I noticed she was not spending much time with the dog. I told her he needed some attention, and she brushed me off. Sometimes we got into fights over this. She would say to me she was going somewhere and leave me with the dogs. This was her responsibility. So naturally, I'm getting a little bit pissed at this point. One day after she left, I realized she didn't take her phone. Curiosity got the better of me, and like a bloodhound, I looked through it. There were texts between her and Alex, some of them flirty. He had a different name on her phone, and the spicy messages were hidden. The longer I read them, the angrier I got. So naturally, I had to do something about this. I wasn't going to let this bitch who conned me into buying a dog that was over $1,000 get away with this. She told Alex she wanted me to get the dog to help him so they could elope together. I got in the car and I had Bonnie with me. We drove over to the ranch house where Alex was. The gate was open and I saw it light on. I went through the back, and that's when I got an idea. I let Bonnie in first. They had the door open to the bedroom. There weren't any animals inside, so they didn't have to worry. Bonnie jumped on the bed and licked her face. I stepped inside, catching them in the act. My wife pulled away, and she accused me of being the bad guy stalking and spying. I confronted her about the cheating. The tears fell, crocodile tears, in my opinion. She asked if she could forgive me. She said that Alex and she hit it off well, and she didn't mean to hurt me. But of course, the damage was done. I told her not to come home. I changed the locks and called my lawyer shortly after that for the divorce proceedings. I told her that if she loved Alex so much, she should live with him. The proceedings went through quickly, and I got the house, the cars, and the golden double. While he was a handful, he became Boney's companion. It's a blessing in this otherwise messed up story. I blasted Alex's breeder business all over social media, posting that he's a cheater, a liar, and will steal wives. Naturally, the public stopped going to his place, and from what I saw, it closed. Good riddance. The dogs, Spartacus, and I are still in that house. She hasn't tried to contact me, and I think she either ran off with Alex or is alone. Neither of them is in my life anymore, and I do not want to find out.